Hello everybody, and welcome to another installment of Damage Control Assistant Senior Curriculum. This is Chapter 2, Lesson 6, and I'm Lieutenant Timothy Mueller. I'll be talking about correcting list when you have a negative GM situation. Now on vessels, there are typically two ways that you can incur a list. It's an off-center weight, or it's with negative GM. An off-center weight, over here on the left of the screen, is fairly intuitive to correct. As long as your G, your center of gravity, is below the metacenter, all you have to do is shift that center of gravity back onto the center line, and then you're going to be right even keel. So you have your G shifting over, which is going to cause center of gravity to move. You're going to have an upsetting angle up until the center of buoyancy moves over, and you have those two forces canceling each other out. Just move that center of gravity back over, such as filling a ballast tank on the high side, and you'll be able to bring yourself back to an even keel. Where a list caused by an off-center weight is fairly intuitive, a list caused by a negative GM is not very intuitive. And if you don't know what to do in this case, and you think it's caused by an off-center weight, it could spell disaster for the ship. So now let's take a look. We're in this negative GM case. We have two vessels, and these are exactly the same. We inclined over well past the initial range, so our metacenter has moved up through some metacentric, and now we're at some equilibrium point right here. If we add low weight evenly, so on both sides, we're trying to move that G down along the center line. If we get that G down below where the metacenter is, then it's going to move back along the metacentric, back onto its center line, and if that G is lower, then we're just going to go right back to an even keel. However, if we try and correct a negative GM list the same way that we did with an off-center weight, you're going to go through, like I mentioned before, you have an angle of lull. And the ship can just, not necessarily randomly, but it doesn't need much of a perturbation to go from one side to the other. If you try and add high weight, so moving the center of gravity over here, that might be enough perturbation to shift the ship all the way, which is already at a pretty extreme angle. It might be at a 13, 15 degree angle. It's going to shift all the way back to its next equilibrium point, which is going to be the same angle on the other side. So you're going to swing pretty erratically through around a 30 degree range. Plus, you've also moved that center of gravity over to that side that you're moving. So you're going to have to shift even more. If you're at the edge of this metacentric where it goes up and then it starts to move down, then you're going to go even further. So you go from 15 on one side to 15, then moving that center of gravity over, 15 might go to 17, and then with the metacentric dropping, you might go all the way to 20, or even further than that. So when you have a negative GM situation, and it's very important to know the ship and have a very good understanding of where the GM is at all times, if you have an unexplained list and your GM is close to zero, it is best to add even weight down low rather than try and correct it by adding weight on the high side. If you know that you have an off-center weight, then you can add to the high side. However, like I said before, and I can't stress it enough, if you have a negative GM situation, you do not, under any circumstances, add weight only to the high side. All right, so this was a quick little video about correcting list when you have a negative GM situation versus when you have it with an off-center situation. The next video is going to be a summary of what we learned here in Chapter 2, along with a quick example problem that covers everything that we hit in Chapter 2. Until then, I'm Lieutenant Timothy Mueller, and I hope you have a great day.